Oh my god, this video is so long. And then we could play a little bit of Hollow Knight after, because I've been thinking about it. Because I've seen kind of like the gist of it. So yeah, obviously, spoiler warning for Hollow Knight, not Silksong, but Hollow Knight. Basically, the only thing that I know about Hollow Knight lore is that there was this king, right? And then there was this evil lady. The evil lady wanted to mind control everybody. She could only control people who had like emotions, I think. And so the king sought out to make some babies that had no emotions. Therefore, the Hollow Knight was born, as well as one other one. He had a brother. And then the brother got a feeling, and it kind of fucked everything over. He kind of loved his dad. He loved his dad, and that love for his dad let the lady take over him and kind of like ruin the whole plan. And then so that's why the Hollow Knight, he goes out and he goes to kill the brother. His only flaw was loving. It's such a sad story. It's such a sad story. But I want to know the nitty gritty. I want to know the spoilers. Everybody's fucking talking about this game. I want to know what's going on. Yeah, it is so angsty. It's so angsty. And I say you're like 90% there. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of the gist of it. But like, dude, I didn't even realize there was like an hour. It's not even hour and 17 worth of like fucking lore stuff. But I don't know. I kind of want to see. I love these little lore dump info videos. So I want to watch. So we're gonna watch. I've also been told that this creator specifically is very nice, so it should be a good video. It contains a few spoilers for Hollow Knight. Yes, of course. I really don't care. I'm just text on screen. Okay, well, fuck you.
If you were to ask me, what is your favorite video game ever made? I would have to say Cory in the House for the Nintendo.
Bro. So you're a little jokester. You got little jokes. You do a little haha. Is this what was funny 5 years ago? Oh my! Don't say based. Don't say based.
But Hollow Knight would be a close second. Hollow Knight was released on February 24th, 2017 by Team Cherry, an indie game studio based in the mythical land of Adelaide, South Australia.
Oh, I didn't know they were
Over the past
Australian.
3 years, Hollow Knight has become an indie darling. The game has sold over 3.5 million copies. It was the opening game at ADGQ 2019. There's a Hollow Knight book, a line of plushies, t-shirts, nicotine patches, nuclear warheads, and even vinyl records for all you goddamn hipsters.
What?
Team Cherry had one goal when making Hollow Knight.
Okay.
They wanted to create a world that allowed players to get completely lost in exploration. We can see this desire in Hollow Knight's design. The levels in Hollow Knight are massive, with secrets and rewards hidden in every nook and cranny, be that powerful charms, special abilities, or the game's navigation system requires the player to work for their map, forcing them to make a stronger mental image of the world in their head. Christopher Larkin's score and Ari Gibson's artwork lend to this as well, creating an atmosphere that the player won't want to leave. But there's one aspect of Hollow Knight that keeps people like me coming back: the world building.
That's crazy that he says that, because I feel like from, when you see any Hollow Knight or Silksong gameplay, like, you don't even think about the fucking lore stuff. So I'm wondering like how they're able to fit so much fucking lore. Hours worth, dude.
When Super Metroid launched in 1994, it stood out for its amazing sense of immersion.
Oh, here we get to know about Metroid. Okay.
Now in 1994, I was busy not being alive, but I've watched enough YouTube video essays to know that this game was a big deal. In case you didn't know, Super Metroid is basically the granddaddy of all Metroidvanias. That's why they're called Metroidvanias. Now in Super Metroid, there are moments that give the player a sense of depth. Basically the feeling that
Wait, I might be a bit dumb, but like the suffix Vania, that doesn't come from like another, like that's like what does the suffix stand for? Castlevania. Oh, so that actually comes from another game. Okay, I hope he goes into it, because I know nothing about Castlevania.
This world exists outside of Samus's interactions with it. In the room
How
right
similar
before
is
that
it?
diabetic crocodile thing, Samus can find the corpse of a random soldier. His inclusion here doesn't change the gameplay at all, but instead gives the player a sense of wonder about the world they are exploring. Who was this guy? Why was he here in the first place? Did he like jazz? Now, finding dead bodies and other random garbage is pretty cool, right? Well, Hollow Knight basically does the same thing, about a dozen times. Through its world building, Hollow Knight turns Hallownest into a living kingdom. You can sense the ancient history of the land when you look at dilapidated structures or giant barred doors. Nothing feels like it was put into the game randomly. There's a reason for it all. Except those reasons aren't the easiest to uncover. Hollow Knight's narrative is buried under layers of NPC dialogue, item descriptions, lore tablets, and even additional content like the Quirrel comic and Fangamer's Wanderer's Journal.
I think a lot of modern games could... they need to take a look at Hollow Knight and how they go about, like, exposing the story. And I guess, yeah, like, the world building. Specifically, and I guess this is more of a problem for me since a lot of the games I play, at least in the past, were gacha. And there is, so many problems with gacha storytelling. It's all just absurd amounts of word vomit and constant telling instead of showing and treating the player like they're stupid. And it makes it all feel so synthetic and boring. Yeah, like, in Hollow Knight, I feel, at least from what I've played, the little bit I played so far, and like all of this, like it lets you connect the dots. It lets you think like, oh, what is this world like? And lets you genuinely, like, slowly, like, encounter it, discover it. It gives you a sense of discovery and a motivation to actually go about the world as well. But did you get to do Penacony and Honkai Star Rail before you quit? That is a bit of a different gacha story. Okay, I did not. I have heard that story is so good, but it's so frustrating because gacha games, they could potentially get better stories and engaging lore, like, as they go down the line. But unfortunately, I've found that at least the first 30 hours or more is just, it gets a little bit unbearable. I don't know. I wish gacha stories were a bit stronger from the get-go, you know? And I get that they kind of have, it's hard because the stories kind of have to keep going for forever. So it's hard to make, like, a contained story. Like, I feel it's easier to make a story for an RPG because you kind of know the conclusion beginning to end and you can get through it so much quicker, right? With gacha, you gotta drag it out. But I don't know. I wish they did more shit like this and didn't hide everything behind layers of monotonous dialogue that's so boring to read. That's why I literally dropped gacha for that reason, because I couldn't do it anymore. I can't. Gacha games have crazy world building. They have a lot of good, like, they know what the world is about and it's very unique, but they don't showcase that in a way that's actually engaging to the average player. You have to sift through, like, random books you find across the world or these random little snippets that are totally so disconnected from the main story that it becomes irrelevant. It becomes irrelevant after a while. But yeah, just something I was thinking about while seeing this, dude.
These
Crazy.
past 3 years have seen an insane amount of research by the Hollow Knight community to make sense of Team Cherry's sprawling world. We've even made it to the point where people are looking at the in-game signs to try and decipher Hallownest's logographic language. In this video, I hope to give you a long and detailed look.
That's crazy. Did you guys know we have a Reddit? You should join it. It's fun.
We've even made it to the point where people are looking at the in-game signs to try and decipher Hallownest's logographic language. In this video, I hope to give you a long and detailed look into the world of Hollow Knight, exploring Hallownest's history and uncertain future. When I'm not busy making surprisingly accurate Super Smash Bros. Roster speculation videos, or insightful podcasts about beloved subjects like the Donkey Kong Country television series, or whatever this was supposed to be, I'm usually making videos about Hollow Knight. And while I am a seasoned Hollow Knight lore expert, I cannot confirm that every musing or theory presented in this video is completely correct. I highly recommend checking out the lore section of the Hollow Knight wiki if you want a more neutral explanation of Hollow Knight's lore. But if you're too lazy to read, then I suggest you sit back, order some Domino's pizza, or just grab a block of cheese from the fridge, and enjoy the mostly complete lore of Hollow Knight. It's a simple fact of life that every human worships a god, be that technology, ideologies, or in rare cases, God. As it turns out, the bugs in Hallownest pretty much operate in the same way. From the Mothkin born from the dream of a giant slug, to the emo kids of the ancient civilization who literally worship the darkness, there is no shortage of things to worship in the world of Hollow Knight. Our story begins with a creature very much worthy of worship. A creature born from the carcass of a Wyrm. The carcass can still be found in the Kingdom's Edge.
Oh,
and
what?
it's our only good look at what worms actually looked like.
Wait, that's
At
sick.
the time Hollow Knight occurs, it is suggested there are no worms left in the world.
I
They
didn't
were
even know they
incredibly
had, like,
long
dragons.
creatures that featured little to no limbs. Another more mysterious property of worms was that they had some kind of prescience or foresight. Basically, they could see the future to some capacity. It isn't clear how effective this ability was. Considering how the entire race went extinct, this foresight ability must have been pretty shit. Getting back to this particular worm carcass, it is
This guy is taking me out. He's taking me out, dude. I feel when people typically make documentaries like this, they're so so focus on the facts. And he's like, well, actually, this was pretty fucking stupid. And it takes me off guard. Like every time I get into it, it always takes me off guard. But that's so fucking cool. I didn't know they had dragons. But hey, I mean, you know, if they had foresight, it means you know what's coming. It doesn't mean you have the means to stop it. So, yeah.
explained that this worm traveled across the distant mountains and wastelands beyond Hallownest. Once it arrived in Hallownest, the worm died. Except not really. Inside the maw of the carcass sits a pale broken egg, out of which hatched a new form of worm, a being of meager shell. This form of the worm is usually referred to as the Pale King, and he's the character basically responsible for everything that happens in Hollow Knight.
It's the dude.
The Pale
that's
King
his
is a
papa.
higher
That's
being,
daddy.
a
That's
type of
dada.
creature that exists above all others. His body was said to shine with a radiant visage that harmed those who looked upon him. The ultimate goal of the Pale King seemed to be in line with that of other worms. A line from the cryptic Mr. Mushroom reads, "Worms pull bugs into their thrall, till ages pass and kingdoms fall." In other words, it's just in their nature. Dogs wag their tails, cats bury their shit, and worms bring massive amounts of bugs into their service in order to form long-standing kingdoms and civilizations.
Okay, bro.
And here in a far corner of the world, the Pale King
Okay,
emerged
bro.
from the corpse of his former self and began to build his eternal kingdom.
Well, actually, that's true. I can confirm dragons have a natural propensity for leading, and they're very cool.
Hallownest. There's just one slight problem. There's like people already living there. The area that would eventually become Hallownest was already filled with mantises, bees, moths, spiders, mushrooms, and bush cosplayers. Each of these groups were already operating with their own cultures and societies, and each group had a different interaction with the Pale King.
Oh my
One of the
god.
more receptive groups to the arrival of the Pale King were the mushrooms of the fungal wastes.
Did
These
he
creatures were
essentially
able to communicate with one another through one shared mind.
Wait.
The mushrooms viewed this shared mind as a strength, and they were kind of smug dickheads about it. Ultimately, the mushrooms wearily accepted the Pale King's rule, viewing his foresight as a shield to the dangers of the future.
Okay.
Another group living in the fungal wastes is the Mantis Tribe. The Mantises have a rich cultural history reaching back to long before the birth of Hallownest.
Smash.
The Mantises are a proud tribe, believing in the importance of proving one's physical strength. The Mantises are fiercely territorial, but will show respect to those who display great power. These Fight Club enthusiasts were led by 4 powerful Mantis Lords,
Dude, I can't focus.
who I guess just kind of sat around waiting for outsiders to challenge them. The Mantis Tribe had no interest in the Pale King's kingdom,
Stop! I can't
but the two
focus on the
communities did
lore.
come to a truce. In exchange for their
Dude,
independence from
taking me
Hallownest,
out.
the Mantis Tribe kept the beasts of Deep Nest from invading Hallownest. Not sure why they
Okay.
didn't just go out the other exits from Deep Nest, but whatever. I'm not an expert on Border Patrol. I don't work at ICE anymore.
Anymore?
Let's move on to Deep Nest. All
No!
of the different tribes of Hallownest were kind enough to leave lore tablets behind,
Let's
detailing pretty much everything
not
we
move
need to
on.
know about them. Unfortunately, the bugs of Deep Nest didn't do that. We know that the spiders of Deep Nest had a monarchy because why not? Those are always good, right? Also, within Deep Nest are a separate group of spiders that immigrated to Deep Nest at some point in the past. This group was known as the Weavers, and they established their own culture and history within Deep Nest. They used looms of silk to weave stories, spells, and shields.
Wait, that's really cool.
One thing we know for sure about Deep Nest is that they really didn't want anything to do with Hallownest. The struggles of Deep Nest Hallownest relations would become painfully clear as time goes on, but for right now, it seems like the two remained fairly isolated from one another. Another section of pre-Hallownest includes Green Path, Now, as far as we can tell, the mushrooms, mantises, and spiders of Deep Nest didn't worship any higher beings. There is this giant mushroom corpse in the fungal core, but I don't think this is a higher being. I mean, who the hell would want to worship a fat-ass mushroom? Fat-ass slugs? Now that's dope. The land we know as Greenpath was created by the higher being known as
Don't fat shade him. Don't fat shade him.
Used her great mind to dream the vegetation of Greenpath into the once barren caverns. Un's followers, the Mothkin, were also born out of Un's dream, making her their creator. Greenpath at its height was actually much larger than we see in-game. At one point, Greenpath stretched into both modern-day Queen's Garden and possibly Fog Canyon. Greenpath's citizens showed themselves to be a fairly developed society. They built a temple at the Lake of Un in order to worship
Dude, this
her,
is already
and
so
they
much.
even had their own line of defense, with Moss Knights showing proficiency in combat, using nails and shells as weapons. The Law of Un continued to remain in effect even after the Pale King arrived, but it seems like they allowed the king to establish a road through their lands, leading travelers to the heart of Hallow. Hence the name Greenpath. Yeah, Team Cherry really racked their brains when naming this area, didn't they?
Listen, it's easy to remember. That's what I want. That's what I need.
And while there is no lore on how these bees can turn into fucking drills, or how they can ignore all known laws of aviation, we do know how they reacted to the Pale King.
This
These
area
bugs
looks so
decided
cool.
to seal their hive off from the rest of the world, with only patrol bees being able to enter and exit the hive. So yeah, the bees are pretty much pointless in this story. And finally we have the Moth Tribe. In-game, the only moth settlement is in the Resting Grounds, but the tribe might have also inhabited the Crystal Peak at one point. Now, as we all know, moths in real life are just complete assholes.
Yeah,
As for the moths in Hollow Knight, well, it's a bit complicated.
No, well, they look so cute. How could they be so mean if they look so cute? What do you mean?
The moth race is described as being a rather pacifist group, with few ever choosing to take up a weapon. During the Pale King's reign, the Moth race delved amongst dreams and the dead, displaying the importance of remembering those who have passed, as well as learning how to shape dreams themselves. Similar to the Mothkin, the Moth tribe was born from a higher being known as the Radiance.
Oh, I was kind of wondering where like the big evil god came in. Okay, wait. So she also made the No. She didn't also make the Mothkin, but in a similar fashion to the Mothkin, the Moth tribe was born from a higher being known as the Radiance, which is kind of the big bad. That's I know that much. Oh no, this is gonna go so bad. Oh my god, if they fucking die, dude, is she gonna like freaking? I feel like she ended up like freaking mind controlling them, making them evil. Oh my god.
Described as being a light in which the Moth tribe basked. So she was basically a giant lamp to them. Another important aspect about the Radiance is her ties to dreams and a substance known as Essence. Essence are the remains of wishes and dreams, and are represented in-game by these dream catcher particle effects. Essence can take the form of whispering roots, as well as dream ghosts, both of which are memories taking root in the world. The Radiance appears to be a creature made of essence, but she isn't the only higher being to give off essence. Un has green particles, the Pale King has gray particles, and this sexy character named Grim gives off fiery red particles.
Okay, well at least he's honest.
However, the Radiance appears to be the main god when it comes to dreams, even if other gods also dabble in the dream realm. Getting back to the Moth tribe, it is their interaction with the Pale King that we need to discuss.
Did they not like the Pale King?
The Moths turned their backs on the Radiance completely in order to worship the new light that had appeared, the Pale King's light.
Damn, these fucking moths are some fake
assholes in this game too.
Fake assholes.
Her, the Radiance became a forgotten memory.
Wait, that's so sad.
The past, and a thing that's definitely not going to come up again later in this video.
Sad.
And so the Pale King's new kingdom was established, Hallow. But there is one aspect of Hallow that we need to discuss. Unfortunately, to better understand this, we're going to have to read some poetry. In wilds beyond they speak your name with reverence and regret. For none could tame our savage souls, yet you the challenge met. Under palest watch you taught, we changed. Base instincts were redeemed. A world you gave to bug and beast as they had never dreamed. This is from a poem titled Elegy for Hallow, written by Motomon the Teacher. The poem appears at the beginning of every playthrough, and hints at what the Pale King and his kingdom offered. Much of the land outside of Hallow appears to be a wasteland, where bugs survive off of instinct without the burden of mind. Hallownest somehow taught these bugs and tamed their savagery. Basically, the Pale King changed the instincts of his subjects and granted them higher thought. To get a better picture of this, let's look at two different characters, Boone and Tuck. These adorable panda bug things give us a clear display of Hallownest's effect. While both appear to be the same species of bug, Boone is dumb as a sack of rocks, struggling to string together words, while Tuck speaks fairly clearly. The main difference between these two characters is that while Boone lives outside of Hallownest, Tuck lives beneath the city's capital. Basically, it appears as though Hallownest is a literal holy ground that raises the intelligence of those who dwell within. The Pale King established a path, starting from the kingdom's entrance in King's Path.
So is them gaining that intelligence a consequence of the Pale King beginning his like rulership there? Or is that just naturally given by the area of Hallownest? I want to say it's the king, right? Okay.
Winding through Greenpath and the fungal wastes, and finally ending at the
It sounds like Radiance needed to get good! Because what the hell? Why am I gonna worship somebody who does nothing for me? What the hell?
Massive capital at Hallownest's heart. We now know
I
the
left
capital
too.
city as the City of Tears, but that was likely not its original name. The rain that falls down onto the city from the blue lake above didn't begin until after the kingdom collapsed. So unless the capital was originally named by some edgy literature student, the name City of Tears wouldn't have made much sense. The king's motivation for all this appears to have been his desire to be worshipped. The citizens of Hallownest believe that the Pale King created the world and everything in it. Shrines to the king can be found scattered throughout the kingdom, and king's idols were created and distributed to followers of the king. Despite the worship, the Pale King often kept himself hidden
Bro just did it for the love of the game.
from his subjects, possibly to hide his blemishes. I mean, if you look at the size of the real Pale King to his statue in the ancient basin, the man is clearly overcompensating. The
Yeah,
Pale King's white
that.
palace was also built underneath the city, separating him from his subjects even more so. At the same time, certain powers became shunned in Hallownest, though we don't know for sure if the Pale King had anything to do with this. Lifeblood is a blue liquidy substance that leaves those who drink it feeling refreshed. The use of soul for combat was also shunned. Soul is a sort of life force in Hollow Knight that animates the bodies of living creatures. But some characters are able to control the soul of others to conjure powerful spirits. But aside from a few exceptions, no citizens of Hallownest ever use this power. However, the Pale King didn't rule alone.
Wait, so it was banned to do that kind of stuff?
There was another higher being in the mix, a being known as the White Lady.
Oh, you're so pretty!
The White Lady is a weird brute-like being
looks so
that can be found
cute.
in the modern-day Queen's
Her eyes are
Gardens.
so shiny and cute.
She is encased in a strange cocoon, and we know very little about her. With as much exposition we get for the Pale King, there is next to nothing on the White Lady. But one thing we do know is that she likes to breed. Like, a lot.
Excuse me?
The White
pulling up
Lady
to her
would often
doorstep.
retreat to the Queen's Gardens, an area of land once controlled by the Mosskin. How exactly she walked around and actually went places is a lore question too deep for even my expertise.
Her eyes are
The White Lady is
adorable.
also known as a pale being, along with the Pale King. What exactly are pale beings? Well, we don't know for sure,
He looks
but
so
they seem to
sad.
stand out even amongst higher beings, as being even more powerful. I know that's a little confusing, so let's try using an example.
She looks like the
I'd say
autism
that
creature. She
regular higher
does.
beings are like a TP Link Archer C7 AC1750 wireless dual band gigabit router. While
Okay.
pale beings are like the Asus RT-AX88U AX6000 dual band 8X gigabit Wi-Fi router. Under the Pale King, Hallownest
Okay,
underwent
bro.
a bit
Yeah.
of an industrial
I
revolution.
understand.
He ordered the construction of the stagways, which were used
Got
to
it.
transport passengers
Got
and
it.
goods. The Forgotten Crossroads
Oh,
and the
now I
storerooms
get
above
it.
the City of Tears were used to store goods that traveled along these stagways. The king also ordered the construction of the tramways, because literally no one is safe from the threat of automation. A tram was built between the Forgotten Crossroads and the resting grounds. A second tram was built from the kingdom's edge across the ancient basin over to Deep Nest. And then a third tram was started in Deep Nest and attempted to go further into Deep Nest. Not sure how useful that would have been to the bugs of Hallownest, but whatever. The Pale King's a smart guy. I'm not gonna question him. But anyway, the Pale King's
Oh,
super
he's
smart
dead!
plan to build a...
Shit, my bad. He's dead. That's why he looks sad. Remember I said he looks sad? What the fuck? Because he's fucking dead! There's no life behind those fucking eyes, you dumbass!
Tram in Deep Nest ended up getting a few of his tram workers killed. The bugs of Deep Nest rejected the Pale King's attempt to build a tram in their territory, further cementing the poor relations shared between the two groups. Aside from convenient fast travel, regular pathways were also used to cart goods around the kingdom. From this was born probably one of the most important groups in Hallow Nest, and perhaps even all of fiction. An elusive guild of bugs, simply known as the Menderbugs, took to maintaining the various signs scattered throughout Hallow Nest.
Music.
From the journal entry of one Menderbug, we can catch a glimpse
What is this music? This music isn't for the game, is it?
into their ancient and unknowable minds.
Dear, dear diary, isn't life just the most beautiful thing? Fixing signs, mending posts, let them break, I say. I'm a better mender for all that repairing. I sometimes doubt there's a single bug in all of Hallow Nest happier
Such a
than
fucking...
me.
Another example of the Pale King's
Whimsical,
expanding
like, ass
infrastructure is the Crystal Peak. This area is filled with crystals that grow rapidly along walls, ceilings, and even the shells of certain bugs. These crystals were considered valuable to the bugs of Hallow Nest, resulting in large-scale mining efforts. We don't actually see the crystals used anywhere else in Hallow Nest,
Yeah, why were they
but they are said to
them?
contain a sort of energy. The crystals are also said to sing, if you listen very carefully.
It's gonna play a meme. He's gonna do some. Oh my god, I fucking called it. God damn it.
In terms of military, Hallow Nest's first line of defense
It was too good. It was too good.
known as the Five Great Knights.
He couldn't help himself.
The members of this esteemed coalition were Ogrim, Hegemol, Zamir, Drya, and Isma. For being so important, most of the information about the
Wait, I'm sorry, hold on. What the?
In terms
That
of
it threw me off so
military,
bad.
Hallow Nest's
Okay,
first
military.
line of defense appeared to be a group simply known as the Five Great Knights. The members of this esteemed coalition were Ogrim, Hegemol,
Cute.
Zamir,
Oh,
Drya,
beautiful.
and
Cute.
Isma. For being so important, most of the information about these knights has been lost to time. Ogrim is the knight we know the most about, since he is one of the few knights still alive during the events of the game. Ogrim expressed a great amount of loyalty towards the king, and he maybe had something going on with Isma, but we really don't know. Hegemol was known for his sense of humor and his soft-spoken voice,
Aww.
but at the same time, he was also dummy thick. Mysterious Samir arrived
What's
in
not to
Hallow Nest
love?
from a serene land, bringing
guy's my
with her
favorite.
a collection of delicate flowers. At
She's
some
so
point,
pretty.
she also got into a relationship with a mantis,
Ooh.
but not just any mantis, a daughter of one of the mantis lords.
Ooh.
So yeah, it seems like these great knights were slaying in more ways than one. All we really know about Drya is that she was fierce, caring, and wise. As for Isma, she was described as being kind. She also appears to be some sort of weird plant life form, but there's no information on where she's from or what her powers were.
Man, and like the Hollow Knight games go through like the aftermath of all of this stuff, right? Like post apocalypse. And then what is Silksong? Is Silksong a prequel to Hollow Nest? Or is that a sequel in terms of like timeline wise? Silksong it's a sequel, so it happens after the events of Hollow Knight. You don't know. If I understood the trailer, Silksong is in a different kingdom entirely. Oh yeah, because it is a different map. That is true. Okay. In that case, like if it is a sequel, I would love to see a kind of prequel to this. And I know the guy's probably going to go into it later once we actually start. Dude, we're like 20 minutes in and we're still not even talking about the protagonist of the story. There's so much lore. That's insane. It would be so interesting to see like to see firsthand the kingdoms collapse and get to know a lot more about these characters because they sound so interesting. Those freaking knights, like what a fucking kooky duo. Like these, or not duo, but a kooky cast of characters. Like I want to get to know these characters. I'm invested. I want to know. I want to see what happened in order for like the Hollow Knight's brother to get to that point. But he'll probably talk about that later.
The Five Great Knights play an important
But I hope they
role
do
in
make
the
a prequel.
Champion's
There's so much
Call,
lore.
the Knotted Grove, and the Battle.
And you know we're gonna get another fucking game, dude, because they're making bank with Silksong.
Battle of the Black Wyrm. We have no idea what these events were or how they affected Hallownest, but they sound cool nonetheless. During Hallownest's reign, there was another strange area that seemed to exist separate from the Pale King's rule. Carved out of the corpse of an ancient bug, an area called the Colosseum of Fools was constructed, and it was a destination for warriors from outside Hallownest. The sole purpose for fighting in the Colosseum appeared to be simply for glory, with a mysterious figure known as the Lord Fool overseeing the combat. We don't know when the Colosseum was constructed or if the Pale King was involved, but one of his servants, the Pale Lurker, became a champion in the Colosseum, perhaps indicating the Pale King's approval. And finally there was the Royal Waterways, where the fecal excrement of the kingdom was washed out into the fungal wastes.
Dude, what
this
don't they
area
have?
saw the rise
They
of
have
a
a
species of
freaking poopy
parasite-like
area.
creatures called the Flukes. The Flukes spawned from the Fluke Marm, a giant monster with cavities in which tinier flukes live. There really isn't too much lore involved with the
Ew.
Flukes, but I do need to point out that the Fluke Marm is canonically a MILF.
That's not what that says!
Like, that's not even debatable.
That, yes, it
Sky
is!
is blue,
Okay.
2 + 2 = 4, and we all want to fuck this thing.
I hate that this thing has so many holes. I get scared. He says this, and then I look at this, and then I see how many holes it has, and I am afraid.
And so this was the kingdom of Hallownest at its height. Hallownest was a vast kingdom connected by a network of stagways and tram stations. The bugs of Hallownest mourned their dead on the resting grounds, engaged in commerce using Geo, the de facto currency of the region, and a thriving capital located in the middle of the kingdom. The Pale King had succeeded in crafting a full-blown society, but we all know there are pitfalls to living in a society. As a suspiciously knowledgeable hunter points out in his journal, the Pale King had created a population of weak and pathetic creatures. The bugs
Whoa!
of Hallownest did not hunt for their own food, and had become complacent with their comfort. This is even
That's so
more
mean.
obvious with the east wing of the capital. These greedy members of Hallownest's high society became complete cowards, obsessed with riches and plumb from excess wealth. The bugs living in Hallownest's prime looked quite different than the instinctive simpletons they once were. Their savagery had been replaced with intelligence, and through that intellect, they gave the Pale King the devotion and service he desired. And while there were a few
Just like in
snags
real
along
life.
the way,
Bro.
they were shining times for the king and his subjects. Resting at the threshold of Hallownest is a strange lore tablet, proclaiming Hallownest to be the last and only civilization. It calls Hallownest an eternal kingdom. This appears to have been the Pale King's goal, for Hallownest to stand against a wasted world as a final beacon for civilization. And that was the Pale King's ultimate folly, to think that he could succeed where so many others had failed before. Long before the Pale Kings or the Barry Bensons of the world, the land of Hallownest was controlled by an ancient caste. Hints of Hallownest's history are littered throughout the land, with the most
This is
notable examples
crazy.
being the soul totems and arcane eggs. One sect of these ancient bugs didn't worship a god like the Pale King or any lord, but instead a dark and mysterious substance known as the Void. This ancient
See, I thought the king was like the first and only. And then this guy just said that there's freaking more. What the
caste
fuck?
once also tried to lay claim to the entire land of Hallownest.
And I guess the question is that these other rulers, like, did they have the same, like, intelligence AoE effect that the Pale King had? Or were they just, like, savages still? I don't know.
But they too failed. In his quest to conquer all of Hallownest, the Pale King had made an enemy long forgotten, an enemy that was about to be remembered. I mentioned earlier that the Moth Tribe entirely forgot about the Radiance in order to worship the Pale King, but that isn't quite true. Memories of her still lingered, and hushed whispers of faith kept the Radiance alive. At the summit of the Crystal Peak, a location known as Hallownest's Crown, a strange collection of glyphs can be found. Joining these glyphs is a statue of the Radiance, presiding over the kingdom below. This old summit is the sole standing shrine left to the Radiance. This was built in order to keep the memory of the Radiance alive. The Radiance's light began to appear in the dreams of Hallownest's citizens. This light manifested itself in an infection that ravaged through the kingdom's tunnels. Those infected would fall into a deep sleep and awaken with broken minds. Some of the lesser bugs tried to resist the Radiance's light, which only resulted in them being consumed by it even more so. Many infected bugs lost their wills and began attacking bugs that weren't infected.
But like, why?
The infection also...
Okay. What? Okay. No, sorry. I was gonna ask a question. Anyway. So why was the Radiance was the Radiance in control? I assume she was in control of this brainwashing stuff? Was she just bitter that all of her worshippers left her and fucked off to the Pale King?
The infection also twisted the bodies of its hosts, causing them to bloat and occasionally develop orange cysts on their bodies.
Ew.
For many victims, they were reverted back to their basic instincts, carrying out the duties they once fulfilled in life, but now as mindless slaves. Those caught up in the infection were linked into the Radiance's hive mind, allowing her to control their bodies if needed. As the infection spread across Hallownest, many groups looked to solutions to fight off the Radiance's light. The gates to the City of Tears were closed in an attempt to keep the infection from reaching the city. The stagways were also shut down at some point, and many of the stags eventually died out.
That's so, like,
But
why
some
did
took
she
more
do that?
proactive efforts against the infection.
No, I guess revenge.
The scholars of the Soul Sanctum decided to harness the power of soul in an
That
attempt
sucks.
to fight the infection.
They literally made her a shrine so that her name wouldn't be forgotten. And then she still brainwashed them anyway. Insanity.
This resulted in the deaths of hundreds of bugs, whose souls were sucked out and injected into the bodies of the scholars. Their goal was to achieve some kind of pure focus, which would somehow protect them from plagues of the mind. The scholars' leader, the Soul Master, was driven mad by the sheer power of soul, and his entire sect failed to avoid infection.
Oh.
But hey, at least they took as many innocent people down with them as they could.
Dude, shut up.
The Mantis Tribe,
That's so
showing
sad.
a stronger will than the common bug, were able to stave off the infection. However, one of the 4 Mantis Lords turned against his sisters. He and his followers took in the infection willingly, as it gave them more strength and courage. At some point during all this, the Traitor Lord and his followers were exiled from the Mantis village, eventually taking up residence in the Queen's Gardens. The Traitor Lord's daughter ended up dying at some point.
No!
This is the same Mantis that was in a relationship with Zamir, one of the 5 Great
No!
Knights. But the Mantises rejected their union because of Zamir's outsideness. As a gamer, this type of prejudice is all too familiar, and honestly, it makes me sick. With the 5 Great Knights completely useless to fight against the infection, the Pale King devised his own
I don't
scheme.
even know what to say when he does
A
this
scheme
shit.
involving a
Takes me
strange
out.
substance known as Void. As I mentioned earlier, the Pale King's White Palace was built in an area called the Ancient Basin, but his castle wasn't the only noteworthy thing down there. At the bottom of the Ancient Basin was the
word
entrance
triggers
to a
me.
pit, known as the Abyss. Within the Abyss was a lake composed of void. The Pale King realized that this void could be given form, as evidenced by an imprint of such, deep within the
Oh, wait, I wonder if this has to do, because I haven't died yet playing Hollow Knight, because I'm freaking good at the game. But I've seen that when people die in Hollow Knight, there's like this black version of you that you kind of have to fight off when you come back. Does this have to do with that?
Abyss, possibly
it's
left
unrelated,
there by
I don't
the ancient civilization that predated Hallownest. The Pale King devised a workshop in his palace, where he placed void in armor shells imbued with soul, creating servants known as King's Molds and Wing Molds. These void creatures were somehow imprinted with the desire of the Pale King, so that they would serve him. It isn't clear when the Pale King started making these creatures. There is evidence to imply that even common bugs were aware of King's Molds, but the point is, the Pale King turned to the void in order to create another creature.
Right, so then they couldn't be overtaken by the
radiance. Contain the radiance
Yeah.
and her infection.
Yeah!
He tried to create a pure vessel.
Oh,
The
I thought he...
Radiance's
Okay,
infection needs its host to have a will and a mind in order to enslave it. A pure vessel would be a creature made of void, designed to lack those features. The Pale King believed that by harnessing the void inside a pure vessel, he would be able to stop the infection and keep Hallownest lasting eternal. But his method for creating this so-called pure
Oh my
vessel
God!
was incredibly cruel. This
What?
is where the White Lady and her King Kong-sized libido come into play. These two higher beings engaged in a union of some kind, resulting in the creation of several eggs that were dropped down into the abyss.
Just going
There,
at it
the
like
void seeped
fucking
into these
rabbits.
eggs, corrupting the offspring of the Pale King and the White Lady. This act resulted in the creation of the vessels. The vessels are not technically considered to be.
I thought he only had one sibling. Ah! Holy
alive.
shit!
They are shells created from the Pale King and White Lady that have been filled with the void. Within each vessel is a shade, a completely void being hidden behind the face of the vessel. Vessels are also non-gendered, I guess because they're dead or something. I'm not sure if that's how that works, but whatever.
Bro, it's a fucking
I'm
shade.
Not an
It
expert on
doesn't.
these kinds of things. I don't work at ICE anymore.
Stop!
Thousands of vessels were created during this
God
process,
damn it. I
but
can't.
only one was chosen as the pure
This
vessel.
guy's so
This
goofy.
particular vessel, chosen by the Pale King, was deemed the Hollow Knight, and was taken away to the White Palace.
Roll
But I want to take a
credits.
bit of a closer look at this part of the story. There are a number of questions and theories surrounding this moment that I really want to dig into. The big question surrounding this moment is, why was the Hollow Knight chosen over any other vessel? One common theory is that the Pale King took these vessels back to the White Palace and evaluated them using his giant collection of buzzsaws.
What?
This theory is probably the least likely explanation.
What?
It kinda
Excuse me?
exists just to explain the buzzsaws, which is quite the mystery, I'll admit, but doesn't really mesh with the vessels very well.
Players coping. This is just players coping with the cruelness of the devs. I've seen The Path of Pain. That looks horrifying. That looks horrifying.
How does being good at Super Meat Boy prove that you are a worthy vessel? And while thinking about logistics in a game about magic bugs is never a good idea, how exactly did the Pale King transfer these thousands of vessels to his palace without characters like the Dung Defender finding out? So this means that the Pale King probably made his decision without taking any of the vessels out of the abyss. So how did the Pale King make his evaluation? I think the best explanation comes from a theory I originally heard from a user named Golden Flower Fan. Basically, the vessels were hatched down at the bottom of the abyss, and the first one to make it to the top was chosen by the Pale King. In a memory of this event, we see vessels falling from above back down into the pit of the abyss. Perhaps these vessels weren't being cast down into the abyss, but fell while trying to escape out of it.
Oh.
The lore tablet outside the abyss appears to support this theory. It reads, "Our pure vessel has ascended. Beyond lies only the refuse and regret of its creation. We shall enter that place no longer." This tablet was likely written right after the Hollow Knight was chosen, considering that is when the entrance to the abyss was sealed off. The tablet proclaims that the pure vessel has ascended, or in other words, climbed out of the abyss. And while cut content should never be considered canon, I would just like to point out that an earlier version of this tablet, found in the game's code, was even more explicit about this. It read, "From below, our pure vessel has ascended." But how does making it to the top of the abyss first prove that the Hollow Knight is somehow a perfectly hollow vessel? Well, I think this whole concept might just be a misconception. What if the Hollow Knight wasn't any different from the other vessels? All the vessels were made in the exact same way after all.
That is true.
The idea that the Hollow Knight was somehow more hollow than the other vessels comes from the fact that there were so many vessels created in the first place. If they only needed one, then why create so goddamn many? I mean, this is like Octomom on steroids. Well, these are bugs we're talking about, so it would make sense that multiple offspring would come from one egg. And it might have been a precaution to produce multiple vessels in hopes that at least one would be able to successfully escape the abyss. Now another explanation could be that the Pale King just yeeted other vessels that made it to the top first, after determining that they weren't hollow, which would better explain why so many were created. Ultimately, the exact details aren't super important, but I
That's
do
so
find it
many though.
interesting
They
how
cover
many
the
different
fucking
interpretations
walls.
can be pulled from this part of the lore. After the Hollow Knight was chosen, the Pale King sealed the doorway to the abyss, leaving the discarded vessels to rot away in darkness. These actions were not taken lightly by the Pale King or the White Lady. Both participants expressed shame in what they did, but saw no other option to save the kingdom.
Yeah, like if they
But
needed to
vessels
save the
weren't only
kingdom.
poor saps sealed away in the abyss. There's also a lighthouse that was built on top of a naturally formed spire, its light shining down on an ocean of abyss below. Inside was one of the Pale King's royal retainers, who was left in charge of keeping the lighthouse turned on. So this brave soul was willingly sealed in a dark and dangerous tomb for the rest of his life, just so he could not pull a lever. Well, at least he was living with purpose.
No, that's kind of crazy though. That is kind of crazy.
Sealed and the Hollow Knight chosen,
That's messed
the Pale
up.
King's plan was beginning to come together. The Hollow Knight was raised and trained to prime form, causing it to grow several times its original size.
Whoa.
We don't know exactly why this happened, but I guess the Hollow Knight is just a grower and not a shower.
Okay.
We know that the Hollow Knight
Thank you
was
for your
trained to
stunning
use a
deduction.
nail, but why was this even necessary? One possible explanation is that the Hollow Knight needed to protect itself in case an intruder tried to kill it. You know, like the player. Or perhaps this was important in the
Maybe.
process of containing the Radiance.
Well, yeah,
Unfortunately,
if you want to contain the Radiance, obviously you have to fight it. No? So that kind of makes sense, right?
the details of that are never fully explained. The Hollow Knight might have somehow focused the Radiance inside itself, but Team Cherry gives us no explanation of how that might have worked. But that still wasn't enough for the Pale King. Additional seals were needed in order to protect the Hollow Knight's physical body while the Radiance was trapped inside of it. To achieve this, the Pale King sought the help of 3 particular bugs, who would later be known as the Dreamers: Lurien the Watcher, Motomon the Teacher, and Hera the Beast.
Radiance is more about getting in your dreams than attacking there, to be fair. I mean, yeah, but if you want to beat her up, you're not going to go in a dream and beat her up. You're going to fucking you're going to beat her up in real life. So yeah, he needs to know
Lurien is
self-defense.
definitely the most mysterious of the 3 Dreamers. He lived in the Watcher Spire in the City of Tears. From there, Lurien
No, you do?
watched-
Wait, what? Well, then how do you know how to fight in the dream? Oh. Okay, well, that's stupid. They should have just beat her. Okay, well, that's dumb. They should have just beat her up in real life, but like... Oh, she doesn't have physical... What? Okay, well, alright, then you beat her up in the dream, but how are you gonna beat her up in the dream then? This isn't like you're lucid dreaming and you can just fly on command to become the fucking avatar. Right? Right? I didn't know you had to beat her in her own realm, though. I didn't know that. That was my bad. My fault.
over the city with his telescope. Lurien was a pretty big fan of the king, so it probably took little convincing for him to lie down for him. Lurien might also be tied to another strange incident that occurred in the City of Tears. Hidden on some of Lurien's lore tablets are images of jars, the same jars that can be found stockpiled in the Tower of Love. This building sits on
Tower
the
of Love.
outskirts of the city, and is the setting of one of the most bizarre bosses in the game, the Collector. The Collector is a void construct that appears to have been made from the same mold used to create the King's molds. But the Collector is unique because, well,
Good grief, he's naked!
the Collector stayed in the
He's a
Tower
nudist!
of Love with a noble bug who likely owned the establishment. In the tower, a number of bugs can be found captured in jars,
Aw.
implying that these two were tasked with collecting these creatures. However, the Collector somehow became obsessed with grubs, creating a map to keep track of grubs it captured in jars.
Oh, so this is why you free all of those grubs. It's this guy going crazy with all of them.
As well as keeping a strange shrine displaying a grub in the style
What?
of the Vitruvian Man.
What the heck?
Eventually, the bug staying with the Collector decided to lock it inside the Tower of Love, and fled to the Queen's Gardens, where it died, likely due to overexposure to the void. Despite being locked up in the tower, the Collector is still spotted by the Hunter at some point, which either means this only happened recently, or the Hunter has been farting around in Hallownest for a long-ass time. We have no idea what these creatures were trying to do. It's implied that the Collector was trying to preserve the creatures of Hallownest, perhaps trying to protect them from the spread of the infection, but we don't know where the Collector's obsession with grubs originated.
They're
and
cute.
While
Why
Lurien
not?
does seem connected to
It's like trying to explain the appeal of the Labubu. You just like it.
all of this, we don't know how involved
Yes, you just like it. Don't fight me on this. Shut up.
he was with this operation, or what its end goal exactly was.
No, I want to
Motomon
grow.
the Teacher lived in the Teacher's Archives, a library built atop a lake of acid in the Fog Canyon. The lower half of her body consists of tentacles, making
Smash.
her a popular subject for the thriving Hollow Knight R34 community.
Oh my god.
The Archives and the Fog Canyon as a whole are also filled with these strange Metroid knockoffs. These
That'd be
creatures
like a
are
book there.
likely related to Motomon in some way. They could be her live offspring, her test tube babies, or possibly even her shit. Motamon uses futuristic cathoid ray tube things to store information about Hallownest. Several terminals in the teacher's archive go into detail about the Pale King's plan to defeat the Radiance, indicating that Motamon had intimate knowledge of what she was taking part in. Finally, the Pale King sought the help of Hera the Beast, the Queen of Deepnest. Now, as I mentioned earlier, relations between Hallownest and Deepnest were kinda not great. Unlike the other two dreamers, Hera needed to be convinced in order to help the Pale King. Hera would eventually agree to become a dreamer, in exchange for a child. The Pale King agreed, and the two engaged in a dalliance, which is a fancy way of saying they totally boned. The White Lady was okay with this arrangement. In fact, she might have been watching from the closet. The motive behind Hera's request is never elaborated on, but it appears as though the King of Deepnest was dead at this point. Hera was a common bug, so perhaps she desired the Pale King's pale seed so that her child could be of high birth. The bargain between Hera and the Pale King resulted in the birth of Hornet. She became known as the gendered child, because unlike the Pale King's other children, Hornet was not hollowed out by the abyss. Hera and Hornet spent little time together, as Hera had to make good on her end of the bargain. And so the three dreamers were put to rest. Through their actions, a seal was placed over the black egg, prohibiting entrance into the chamber. These dreamers also had their own protection. At the base of Lurian's spire, the Watcher Knights guarded access to their master's body. Motamon's body was protected by a giant jellyfish named Umu. On top of this, Motamon entrusted her servant Quirrel with a mask which would be required to break an additional seal she had placed over herself. So she basically is double wrapping herself. As for Hera, we're not really sure what protected her, since it is never actually seen in-game. We don't know where this creature is hiding, but whoever it is, they really suck at their job. Now there appears to be one more element to the Pale King's plan, involving the Weavers. Hidden away in the Weaver's Den is an incomplete seal of binding, woven from silk. This design prominently features the Hollow Knight's head, and can be found in the White Palace, as well as blocking the exit during the Hollow Knight fight. Silk spools created by the Weavers can be found in the Stag Station in Deepnest, as well as the Stag Station next to the White Palace. These spools can also be found in the Pale King's workshop. We know that the Weavers were closely tied to Hera and Hornet, so their actions might have been a part of the deal between the Pale King and Hera. Once the Hollow Knight was ready, the Radiance was somehow channeled into the vessel, which was then placed inside of a giant black egg located in the Forgotten Crossroads. This egg was built to sustain the Hollow Knight, and itself appears to be fashioned from void.
Why?
The Hollow Knight was chained up, and the entrance to the black egg was locked behind a powerful seal created by the three dreamers. Initially, this convoluted plan actually worked, and the infection was successfully contained. Memorials to the Hollow Knight and the dreamers were erected in the city.
Wait, okay, I got a little lost there. So they got infected, but what was the purpose of getting him infected? To contain it, but wouldn't other people still be getting infected even if the Hollow Knight wasn't infected? Wasn't the point of the Hollow Knight to not be infected? I think I lost something here. Because his job was to stop the spread of Radiance infection on his own. But how's he going to do that if he's infected? Like, I guess just go in the dream? Was he not able to go in the dream if he wasn't infected? Question mark? Because he's hollow. The Radiance herself was contained. The Hollow Knight's first to take... Oh, but to take all the infection. So he's going to take all the infection. Can he handle all that? There's a lot of it. He contains her, and then the dreamers are there, so the door can't be opened at all. Oh. Damn, so he was just supposed to... Oh. Okay. Alright. That makes a bit more sense. Because I'm like, why is he going to get infected? I don't freaking get it. Okay. There, I got that. Alright, so they made him so he can contain the infection so that nobody else could get the Radiance. Because I guess that she's got a limited amount of Radiance, I guess. Like, I just thought that was, like, kind of infinite. You know? But I got, another bottle of water, and I've been drinking these things called Poppy. Honestly, I heard that there was even a callback for these drinks, so I don't know. I might be just drinking like cancer, but Tastes good. Tastes good. I don't have Diet Pepsi. I've been taking a little break from Diet Pepsi because I was kind of spamming that and it felt evil. So yeah, we went to prebiotic soda. I think I just got a lawsuit or something because they were claiming it was probiotic, but it really like didn't have enough probiotic effects to be called probiotic or something. But I'm drinking it anyways. I don't give a freak. I'm drinking the orange one. It's pretty good. Pretty good. All right, let's maybe back up a bit and we'll continue.
The Radiance was somehow channeled into the vessel, which was then placed inside of a giant black egg located in the Forgotten Crossroads. This egg was built to sustain the Hollow Knight, and itself appears to be fashioned from void. The Hollow Knight was chained up, and the entrance to the black egg was locked behind a powerful seal created by the three Dreamers. Initially, this convoluted plan actually worked, and the infection was successfully contained. Memorials to the Hollow Knight and the Dreamers were erected in the City of Tears and the Resting Grounds.
Wait,
But
so it
this is
actually
the part
worked
of the
for a little.
story where things get a little bit hazy. By the time these statues were constructed, citizens had taken to writing on parchment woven from spider silk, which was all destroyed when water started pouring down onto the city. We don't know how long the Hollow Knight was able to completely contain the infection. Bugs from Dirtmouth used to go to the Temple of the Black Egg to pray, saying they felt at peace within the walls. But after a while, they stopped going, perhaps indicating that the infection was beginning to leak out again. The infectious air continued to seep through Hallownest for years, eventually even reaching the deepest parts of the kingdom.
Wait, so what happened?
As it turns out, the Pale King's pure vessel wasn't quite so pure after all. The Hollow Knight had been tarnished by an idea instilled.
Oh.
While the game never explicitly tells us what that idea was, it does hint strongly at what it might be. Hidden away in the White Palace is a memory showing the Hollow Knight and the Pale King sharing a moment. The Hollow Knight might have developed a parental bond to the Pale King. And who could blame it? The Pale King is a pretty great dad after all. You know, if you ignore the infanticide and everything.
That's so sad.
Remember those smug mushroom dickheads? Well, it turns out their trust in the Pale
God, I
King
just
was a complete mistake.
Spit
That
everywhere.
shared mind isn't looking too good now, is it? In the fungal core, the corpse of a giant mushroom lies dormant. Its final thoughts were, "Pale Wyrm, what good to see a demise unavoidable?" This could imply that the Pale King always knew that his
what I said
kingdom was
earlier.
doomed. All he could do was delay the inevitable. This is likely the moment when Hallownest as it once was entirely
sad,
collapsed. The Hollow Knight had not completely stopped the infection, and while it may have taken a while, Hallownest was eventually brought low. It's at this point that characters and areas begin to resemble as we know.
Okay. Here's where I'm getting a little confused here too. His only flaw, his only crime was loving his daddy. That is so fucking cute. I mean, not cute, but like it hurts, right? It's angsty. But if he was already like containing the infection in his body, why does it matter? Can they not just like load him up with all the infection? It's not gonna fucking matter because he's sealed off anyway. Like, how does that influence his capacity to hold all of the thing, the orange gunk? That's my question. It's not like a disease. Yeah, I know, but like again, if the point was to keep him there so he could contain all of it, how does him being like mind controlled affect his ability to like contain it? The orange gunk is a symptom, not cause. Okay, yeah, fair. Okay, fair. Exploitable weakness. Okay, maybe he explains it later. I don't know.
When it became
I need to
clear
see.
that the Hollow Knight was not able to contain the Radiance, the Pale King
She can
resorted
control
to
just
his
enough for him
final
to leak a
plan.
little. Oh.
He fucked off, hiding himself, his White Palace,
What? He
and
fucked
his Pale
off?
Court in the dream world. At this point, all of the furniture in the palace was covered under white sheets, similar to how people in the real world cover their furniture while away on long trips. The palace was also completely covered with thorns and buzzsaws.
No thought, no will, nothing to corrupt. Yeah, I understand that much. But I guess, like, was he making a conscious effort to kind of, like, hold it? And then, I guess, when she, like, brainwashed him, then she was like, I'll let it leak a little bit. And then it just leaked through everything, I guess.
Similar to how people in the real world cover their
trying to make
houses
sense of
with
it.
thorns and buzzsaws. The Pale King would eventually pass away while sitting on his throne in the White Palace. There's no confirmation on what killed him, but there are a few things to consider. The throne room is incredibly dark compared to the rest of the palace, and the particle effects and ambient track in this room
Died from vitamin D deficiency.
are identical to that of the
He's just like
Abyss.
me!
All of the king's molds surrounding the Pale King are dead. The ancient basin itself also has become stained with the presence of void, as it can be seen as high as the rundown elevator shaft leading back to the city. Remember that bug that was sealed away in the Abyss to make sure the lighthouse wasn't turned off? Well, the lighthouse was turned off. I guess that whole living with purpose thing is a crock of shit after all. It seems as though the Sea of Void itself actually convinced this bug to betray his king and turn off the lighthouse.
What?
Now I know what you're thinking.
Oh, and
Exactly
that allowed
how
it to.
conscious is the void?
Oh.
Is the void able to think for itself? Can it form strategies? Does it host a podcast? Well,
I hope
according to
not.
this Chozo statue ripoff, the void is powerful, but not unified. So while it can thrash around at things that come near it, or call out in unison to turn off a light, it's not a single conscious being. Getting back to the Pale King, one could argue that the void might have played a role in his ultimate demise, and I've argued that viewpoint in the past.
So when they have those little like black streaks coming out of them, it's just that the void consumed them then. In the least spoilers, there's expansion on Void and Silksong. Ooh, interesting.
But we have to remember that there isn't enough evidence to know for sure. As an expert lawyer and a good friend of mine, Johnny Cochran, once said, "Any evidence that the void was involved in the Pale King's death is circumstantial. My name is Johnny
he say that?
Cochran." Just above the White Palace, the bugs
Are
in
you
the
sure
City
about
of
that?
Tears weren't faring much better. Even if we ignore the fact that the infection was still around, there were other issues that helped lead to the city's downfall. Due to the gates being sealed, some bugs resorted to cannibalism in order to avoid starvation.
Gulp.
And there's also that metric fuckton of corpses lining the walls of the Soul Sanctum. When all was said and done, the only citizen left standing is Eternal Emelita,
Oh,
who
cute.
just laughs her ass off about it like she's a fucking Dark Souls
Fuck.
character.
Oh, I love him.
The
Crazy.
White
Give it to
Lady
me.
ends up in a cocoon deep within the Queen's gardens. She decided to place bindings on herself in order to keep her from spreading her seed. She claims that this is because of the shame she feels in helping the Pale King create the vessels. But honestly, it's probably just her kink. The White Lady also diminished her power, possibly as a way to keep herself hidden from unwanted visitors.
Well, okay, I don't understand why she feels so bad about the whole like making babies kind of thing. Because if they're just hollow anyway and they're not technically alive, like if they couldn't make it out, like it's kind of a skill issue. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me.
Outside her cocoon, Drya stood guard, protecting her queen from the violent traitor mantises. Drya is eventually killed off by these bugs, which is
Oh.
actually pretty pathetic if you think about it.
Oh,
I mean, we're talking like the Netgear WPN
Dude,
824N
stop with the
N150
fucking
wireless
routers!
router pathetic. Speaking of great knights dying pathetically, let's move on to Hagamol. Hagamol held the city crest, a key used to open one of the gates to the City of Tears. At some point, Hagamol's armor shell was stolen by a maggot. Now, maggots were generally looked down upon and forced to do menial labor. They were incredibly
they're
weak
so
and
cute.
basically deserved all of the
No!
disrespect they got.
They're beautiful.
But this one
Don't
maggot
say
decided
that.
to turn the tide, so he stole Hagamol's shell so that he could defend his downtrodden brothers. His actions weren't motivated by the infection.
Oh my god, wait, we fought this guy! I remember now, we fought this guy! Oh my god! Wait, these guys are kind of cool. MVP of the game, actually. Favorite character, and we killed. I feel bad. Well, listen, I wouldn't have had to kill him if he just, like, stopped fighting me. Dude, but that's, like, that's crazy. He, like, rose up, stole the armor. That's kind of crazy.
But instead was the
Look
result
at him,
of
he's
how
so dead with his
hierarchical
tongue
caste
sticking out. Oh my
systems will
God.
always lead to revolution from the working
Oh
class, and that
my
true
God.
freedom can only be achieved, blah blah blah, capitalism is bad, subscribe to my Patreon. Ogre moved to the Royal Waterways and started living in shit, changing his name to Dung Defender. Now, I
Alright.
love wallowing in shit as much as the next guy, but you'd have to really love shit to put up with living with the
just-
flukes. The Dung Defender
Holy fuck, dude. This fucking guy. This fucking guy. He's like if Moist Critical did lore videos but was actually funny and talked about stuff people actually wanted to hear. Oh, who said that? Who said that? Just saying. His jokes hit so hard because he always says it with the most freaking monotonous voice ever. So funny.
kept an unwavering sense of duty and loyalty to the king, and love for his fellow knights. So much so that he made shit statues of them. How nice. Wyrm acted as the defender of the pipeways, as well as Isma's grove. A section of the royal waterways became filled with acid, and in the middle of it all rests Isma's corpse, which has been overcome by plant life. Isma is likely the one responsible for this acid blight, but we have no idea what happened to her. Hornet's whereabouts during this time are fairly mysterious. We know that she departed Deep Nest and didn't return until the events of the game.
Sorry.
At some point, she took to guarding Halnest from intruding warriors, as well as the cast-off shell in the Kingdom's Edge. Despite the Kingdom's woes at large, fortunately this fate did not befall one of the fandom's favorite characters. The Menderbugs continued to fix the broken signs and wayposts of Halnest.
Cute!
From a diary entry, we can see that one Menderbug in particular had found himself on the precipice of a long and loving relationship.
What?
Hello again, diary. Not long now until the
I
next
need to
Minder
meet
Bash.
this guy.
For
What?
us stealthy types, we're a riotous bunch when we get together.
What? Oh.
Kept flashing me that smile. It might be time to muster my courage and act on it.
What?
I love my home and my life, but sharing it with another? Why, that'd be the berry on
You
top.
want some?
Green Path also underwent some changes during this time.
Okay, we're just not gonna acknowledge that, okay?
Un's call, which would bring them back into the dream they were originally born from. But for some reason, Un's strength deteriorated. We don't know why this happened exactly. Was it due to the White Lady claiming part of her kingdom? Was it somehow due to the infection? Some Moths can believe that Un went into hiding, but it appears as though Un is, in fact, calling to her children. But many of the Mothskin are unable to hear or call. Instead, many Mothskin seem to have taken the Radiance's infection into their leaves, which might explain why Green Path became overgrown with vegetation despite Un's deteriorating powers. Mossy vagabonds even openly chose to forsake Un and worship the Radiance.
Whoa.
Another tribe to be
That's
screwed
crazy.
over by the Radiance is the Hive, which fell to the infection after the death of their leader, Hive Queen Vespa. But it appears as though this had little effect on their civilization. The Radiance's hive mind was already familiar to the bees, since the hive probably operated under something similar already. So in other words, the hive probably made out the best in this whole situation. Let's turn our attention back to the moths. After all, it's their
This is
god
what I've
that
been
keeps
waiting to
killing
hear.
everybody. Well, the moth
Yeah.
tribe didn't fare too well, actually, as pretty much the entire tribe
What?
died out. The
What?
only known survivor is the seer. Despite the loss of her tribe, the
Yeah, she sees a lot of things with these. She's got a whole fucking 360 panorama view of her at all times. That's actually really like they were the ones who worshipped the Radiance. What the fuck do you mean they all died?
seer continued to tend to the graves in the resting grounds, while also waiting the arrival of the Wielder, a mysterious being that her tribe has dreamt of for a while. In the Kingdom's Edge, the land became covered in ash molting off of the Wyrm's decomposing corpse. The Colosseum of Fools continued to thrive. The Lord Fool passed away at some point, but nobody really seems to notice or even care. The fools inside the Colosseum were infected, but still seem to have maintained control over themselves. It seems possible that these bugs took in the infection willingly, similar to the Traitor Lord and his followers. This would have given them an edge in combat, similar to using steroids, but without the whole shrinking testicles thing. However, even the Traitor Lord and his followers went mad, so what makes these fools any more special? As for the Pale King's champion...
Yeah, I thought, okay, when he said that, then I thought for a second, like, because I remember he mentioned earlier that the more that you tried to fight, like, the little Radiance infection, the more it would kind of, like, overtake you. So, if you were to just theoretically take it in willingly, are you just able to use the, for lack of a better word, like, power-ups it gave you? Question mark?
The Pale Lurker, well, she just went the normal kind of insane. There appears to have been another unforeseen event with the Pale King's plan. When the Hollow Knight was originally chosen, the door to the Abyss was sealed, trapping the discarded vessels within. But apparently, some vessels didn't get the memo. Vessel corpses can be found littered throughout the kingdom. There's one in the Ancient Basin, one in Green Path, and several trapped in Nosk's lair in Deep Nest. Another vessel that escaped from the Abyss is the player character, the Knight. The exact details on how the vessels escaped the Abyss is unclear. There are indications that they might have slipped into Deep Nest through some old passageway, given void influences in part of the area, and all the corpses found in Nosk's lair. At some point, all entrances to Hallownest were closed off, with the old well-endured mouth being the only way to sneak back in. Despite this, several people have wormed their way into the kingdom, with few ever returning. Characters like Relic Seeker Lem seemed content to just pillage artifacts from the ruined kingdom, but other bugs seemed interested in something greater. In the Howling Cliffs rests the corpse of a member of the Grim Troop. The task of this bug appears to have been to seek out Hallownest, so that the troop might be summoned to the kingdom in the future. The Grim Troop are basically a group of bugs that serve a higher being known as the Nightmare Heart. The troop keeps the heart alive by feeding on the nightmares of fallen kingdoms. This process also involves sacrificing the troop master to his own child because... Hey, look at this cool ass boss battle. Another important group that traveled to Hallownest are the God Seekers. After being abandoned by their old gods, the gods of thunder and the gods of rain, these bugs left their home in the land of storms, seeking out a new god to worship. The God Seekers looked to gods to save them from their own silent mind. While traveling through the wastelands, the God Seekers constructed devices called God Tuners, which helped them seek out new gods. Through this device, they were able to detect the lingering power of the Pale King and find their way to Hallownest. When they arrived, however, the God Seeker was forced into hibernation. She was encased in a strange sarcophagus-like cocoon, which was itself chained up with a lock. It's not clear how this forced hibernation worked, seeing as the cocoon appears to have been made by the God Seeker herself. As for who put the cocoon in chains, I think the most likely candidate is the Dung Defender, considering how the God Seeker's cocoon is found in the junk pit in the waterways, an area the Dung Defender has tasked himself with protecting. This was the general picture of Hallownest after the Hollow Knight was sealed inside the Temple of the Black Egg. The kingdom was stuck in a kind of stasis, with the Pale King civilization destroyed, and the Radiance unable to break free from her chains.
Wait, when we played, didn't we see the black nest? Egg? Whatever it's called? I already forgot. He just said I forgot. Didn't we see that already? Or am I nuts?
The Pale King was rebelling against nature, trying to keep his work standing indefinitely. The stasis over Hallownest held for an age. How long is that exactly? Well, we have no idea. As I'm sure you've noticed, there really isn't a timeline for anything that happens in this game. We also have no idea how long any of these bugs can actually live. Elderbug wasn't around to see the Stagways open, but we know several other characters were, implying that Elderbug is probably one of the youngest characters in the whole game. But this stasis over Hallownest wasn't going to last forever. At some point, the Radiance erupted out of the Hollow Knight, cracking its shell and releasing a loud and powerful roar. The amount of infection leaking out of the Hollow Knight became even greater. The many corpses that lined the roads and cities of the kingdom sprang to life with the amplified power of the infection. This strengthened infection prompted the departure of the Weavers back to their old home. Now this old home might actually be Farloom, the kingdom in which Hollow Knight Silksong takes place. But the amount of knowledge we have about Silksong right now is pathetic.
Little do you know, this video was made 5 years ago. Oh, brother. Oh, brother.
So I'm not saying that's confirmed or anything. This is also around the time that Quirrel arrives back in Hallownest. His memory of Motomon appears to have been clouded due to his time outside of Hallownest. These events are depicted in the Quirrel prequel comic, which also shows an image of the Hollow Knight with a pretty cracked shell. This could mean that Quirrel's arrival happens roughly the same time the Hollow Knight's shell cracks. At around the same time Quirrel arrives in Hallownest, we also see the arrival of the player character, who is commonly referred to as the Knight. The Knight was one of the lucky vessels that was able to make its way out of the abyss. Somehow the Knight ended up venturing beyond Hallownest and into the wilds beyond. It's implied that the Knight was called to Hallownest by either the sealed Hollow Knight or the Radiance within. Regardless, once the Knight shows up and yeets itself off this cliff, the actual game of Hollow Knight finally begins.
Okay, if I'm remembering correctly, when it was talking about the creation of the various Hollow Knights, right? Or maybe I'm mixing it up with something else, but... Oh, wait, no, these were the babies. Oh, this is different. Oh, wait, no, this is different. Wait, no, I was getting the Hollow Knights confused with the other vessels he did. So I was like, oh, maybe he knew maybe he knew, like, to go there because the Pale King put his, like, thing in the vessel, like, you know? I don't know how to word it. I'm stupid. But no, this is unrelated. I forgot that they're kind of, like, organic. Oops. Yeah, you just knew. He just magically knew.
Now,
He's
there's a
built
lot
different.
of details we could get into. Hallownest is full of NPCs and bosses, each with their own stories to tell. But to be honest, I don't think we need to go through all of them, since their stories are relatively straightforward. For example, let's look at the Brooding Moloch. So why is the Brooding Moloch brooding? Because all its friends are dead. And there you go, that's the lore for the Brooding Moloch. Also, it's the only character in the game with a visible asshole. Now, did you really need me to explain that to you? Probably not. So instead, I'm just going to talk about the interactions relating to Hollow Knight's main story. The knight is eventually noticed by Hornet, who lures it deep into Greenpath. There, Hornet attempts to kill the knight, claiming that she knows what it would try to do. At this point, Hornet views the knight as being too weak. After the fight, Hornet can be found in the City of Tears, next to the statue of the Hollow Knight. Hornet mentions that the knight has gained a resilience, due to the time it spent in the void beyond Hallownest. This could be referring to the fact that some of those who leave Hallownest lose their memories, meaning the knight would have no memories of its own tragic conception. Hornet tells the knight that if it seeks to continue the stasis that keeps Hallownest standing, it must seek the Graven Ash, which is referring to the Kingdom's Edge. At this moment, Hornet sees the knight as a possible replacement for the Hollow Knight. Basically, the knight could break the seals that keep the Hollow Knight locked away, defeat the Hollow Knight, and contain the infection itself. It's at this point that I should mention that Hollow Knight actually has 5 different endings, because of course it
Wait,
would.
what?
I'm going
I
to
didn't
be
know. I
explaining
thought it
each
was
of
just
these
one
endings in
ending.
this video, as they each give us a different glimpse into the mechanics
that's
of Hollow
so
Knight's
sick.
world. Now, to get the easiest ending to Hollow Knight, Hornet's instructions to go to the Kingdom's Edge can be ignored completely. If the knight stumbles upon the resting grounds, the 3 dreamers will appear and cast the knight into the dream realm. There, Seer will come to the knight's rescue and grant it the Dream Nail, a special blade that can tear the veil between the real world and the dream world. With the Dream Nail, the knight can venture to the resting places of the 3 dreamers, curb stomp their asses, and unlock the entrance to the Black Egg. Inside the egg, the knight finds the Hollow Knight chained up, silently watching over it. Once the
Oh.
chains are broken, the Hollow Knight screams with that familiar Radiance roar and pursues the knight. As the fight progresses, the Hollow Knight starts trying to kill itself.
Dude, this is
Quirrel
so
style.
sad!
But then the Radiance starts using the Hollow Knight's body to perform her own attacks.
That's so sad!
Once defeated, the Hollow Knight begins to spew infection all over the place. The knight can then focus the infection into itself.
Oh my
This
god.
results in the first ending of the game, called Hollow Knight.
That's so
In this
badass!
ending, the knight usurps the Hollow Knight, prolonging the stasis over Hallownest. New chains and bindings appear out of fuck if I know, and contain the knight, and a new
Please
seal
don't.
is placed over the entrance to the Black Egg. Now there is one giant question looming over this ending. Can the knight actually contain the infection indefinitely?
Yeah, this ending is the one that I thought was like the only ending. I thought there was only one. So the fact there's multiple, is there like an actual good ending or something? Or like a better ending? Oh my god, I'm actually
Or will
excited.
the Radiance still manage to break free one day? Before we answer this question, let's look at some of the other events that can transpire while playing the game. If the player chooses to go to Kingdom's Edge, Hornet will challenge the knight one last time as a final test of strength. After her defeat, Hornet allows the knight to access the cast-off shell, where the Pale King was originally hatched. By interacting with this egg, the knight's shell is marked with the king's brand, technically making the knight the new ruler of Hallownest.
Oh shit.
With the king's brand, the knight can now open the entrance to the abyss and discover the place of its birth. When leaving the abyss, the knight can encounter Hornet again, where for the first time, Hornet suggests that there are actually 2 outcomes the knight can enact. She tells the knight that it can either prolong Hallownest stasis, or face the heart of the kingdom's infection. Within the knight, Hornet sees a chance for change. Instead of just replacing the Hollow Knight, Hornet believes that it may be possible to get rid of the infection completely by using the void inside of the knight. After visiting the abyss and obtaining the Shade Cloak, the knight is capable of reaching the White Lady, hidden away in the Queen's Gardens. The White Lady tells the knight that she has been awaiting a vessel to accept a gift, that gift being one half of a charm called the King's Soul, which she claims will give the knight more power. The White Lady goes on to explain that she can feel the weakening of the Hollow Knight within her roots. She tells the knight that it is free of the blemishes that made the Hollow Knight a flawed vessel. From this dialogue, it is implied that the knight truly is a pure vessel, capable of containing the Radiance successfully. But it's not quite that simple, so we're gonna have to dig a bit deeper into
Yeah,
this.
because how do you know?
Basically, we're gonna need to answer a simple question. What exactly does it mean to be a Hollow Knight? Despite the White Lady's words, we have a number of instances where the characters and item descriptions mention that the knight has a will, and maybe even a mind. But from the Pale King's dialogue when describing the Hollow Knight, it is stated that a pure vessel has no mind or will. So is the White Lady wrong? Or maybe even lying? Her eyes have been clouded by time, and she can be tricked into thinking that Ogrim is in the room when the knight is wearing the Defender's Crest charm. She also thinks that Dryia is still alive, which,
Oh.
So maybe the White Lady is just senile.
I
My
would
problem
trust
with
her
that
words.
theory is that the White Lady states that the vessels stand out to her clearly in a misted world, due to them being her spawn. She also questions whether or not the knight sought her aid, which would imply that the knight must have some kind of will. So for whatever reason, the White Lady thinks the knight is still capable of containing the Radiance, even if it's still able to make decisions.
Yeah, I think he brings up a good point about her, like, not really, like, I don't think she's, like, the person to kind of, like, she's not, like, a reliable, you know? And if the Hollow Knight could be fucked up and learn to have a will or learn to love, that's pretty dangerous. Not fully trusted as a source of info yet, thank you, that. So, I don't know. I think it'd be a bit silly to go and just try the same thing again, knowing what the potential outcome could be.
After all, the Hollow Knight was considered pure, but they still taught it how to wield a fucking sword. I mean, if the knight were truly and completely hollow in a literal sense, it probably shouldn't even be able to walk, or draw a map, or open a goddamn bank account. In short, this whole concept of being hollow is so abstract and hard to define,
Right.
I don't really feel comfortable giving a solid answer on whether or not the knight is or isn't truly hollow, and I think the game leaves room open for other interpretations. Of course, the White Lady's gift is useless without the other half of the King's Soul. In order to reach it, however, the knight must travel to the White Palace, locked inside the body of a King's Mold. In order to bypass the seal, the knight must use a fully awakened Dream Nail. It can do this by bringing 1800 essence to the seer, allowing her to sharpen the weapon's blade. If the knight does this, the seer remarks that the knight truly is the wielder that her tribe has been dreaming of. There's no explicit reason why the Moth tribe was dreaming about this supposed wielder so much, but it seems like they believe the wielder would wash away the crimes the Moth tribe committed by turning their backs on the Radiance. The seer seems to know that the knight might kill the Radiance, and she seems accepting of it, ready for her and her tribe to disappear and be forgotten forever.
That's so
With
sad.
the awoken Dream Nail in hand, the knight can travel to the Pale King's refuge and locate the other half of the King's Soul charm. When equipped, the King's Soul provides a never-ending supply of soul, making it almost useful if it weren't for the insanely high cost of the charm, and the painfully slow rate at which it increases, and the fact that the charm will get replaced in about 5 minutes after you get it. The King's Soul charm itself symbolizes the union between two higher beings.
Wait, replace 5 minutes after you get it?
The rate at which it increases, and the fact that the charm will get replaced in about 5 minutes after.
Wait, so it actually turns into something else. I thought he meant that he would get like another charm that is like better. But it just turns into this. Oh?
You get it. The King's Soul charm itself symbolizes the union between two higher beings. To me, this implies that the King's Soul is a representation of a vessel, which also was created by the union of two higher beings.
God
With the
damn it.
King's Soul in their inventory, the knight now gains access to an area in the abyss called the Birthplace. In this massive pile of vessel shells, the knight can find a giant egg. Dream nailing the egg allows the knight to access its own memory when it was cast down into the abyss.
Oh,
From viewing that memory,
shit.
the King's Soul charm is replaced with the Void Heart charm. The recollection of this event allows the knight to come to terms with the void inside itself. Once the knight has the Void Heart, the shades in the abyss no longer attack it, and that strange creature that gives the knight the Shade Cloak calls it the Lord of Shades. In
Lord
other
of
words,
Shades.
the knight has now bound the once fragmented void under its own will, allowing it to control the void in a powerful new way. With the union of the void, the Pale King, and the White Lady, the knight has gained a strength before unseen. It is with this charm that 2 additional endings become unlocked. Hornet will now be standing outside of the Black Egg, offering to help the knight should the opportunity arrive.
Get
Midway through
good!
the fight with the Hollow Knight, Hornet rushes into battle, subduing the Hollow Knight and piercing its shell. It's at this point that the knight is given
That's
the
awesome.
perfect opportunity to enter into the mind of its sibling, fighting the source of the infection head on,
That
and
looks so
finally
cool.
putting an end to the Radiance's tyranny. Or it can just stand there and let Hornet get knocked unconscious. If the knight finishes off the Hollow Knight as usual, the sealed sibling ending occurs. Basically, it's the same as the Hollow Knight ending, but now Hornet is in the room too.
Then what's
and her
the
face
point?
appears on the door of the black egg.
Whoa.
It's not clear what exactly this means for Hallownest. This might imply that Hornet is now a dreamer, but she's inside the temple, meaning that no one can actually get in there to kill her should the knight ever start leaking infection. At the same time, Hornet mentions that the bindings of the black egg would drain her, so she's probably just going to die anyway, right? Generally, people consider this to be one of the worst endings, but it's worth pointing
This one
out that
doesn't make
Team Cherry
sense.
doesn't support any one ending as being the true ending.
Bullshit, there's
Each
always a
ending
true
is
ending.
canonical in its own right. And
Bullshit!
honestly, this ending isn't the worst. At least the Knight and Hornet will get to spend some quality time together. If the Knight does dream of the Hollow Knight, it will be taken to an arena where it can finally fight the Radiance head on. But the Knight isn't alone, as the other shades from the Abyss will appear in order to help corner the Radiance. Eventually the Radiance gets trapped in the tendrils of the Void. The Knight bitch slaps her a
Oh.
couple times, and then the Radiance is consumed into the darkness. The black egg then appears to turn to shadows and the Void seeps down into the ground. Hornet awakens to find the Knight's broken shell lying on the floor. We get one final shot of the shades in the Abyss going to rest, and the game is over. This ending is called the Dream No More ending.
Oh, that's so
The Radiance
sad.
is
He doesn't
gone,
live
and
anymore,
Hallownest
though.
is finally free from her infection.
But I guess everybody else is safe.
Now I think it's fair to ask a few questions about how the Dream No More ending comes about. When the Hollow Knight was initially chosen to become the pure vessel, the Abyss was sealed up and the rest of the vessels were left to rot away. But somehow, vessels ended up outside of the Abyss, and then one of those vessels was used to replace the Hollow Knight. Exactly how much of this operation was planned, if at all? The White Lady was waiting for a vessel. Did she have any communication with Hornet? Hornet was guarding the King's Brand, the only way for a vessel to enter the Abyss. How did she know it was necessary to guard the King's Brand from weaker vessels? Hell, if the vessels did escape the Abyss by themselves, wouldn't it be pointless to guard the King's Brand, since the vessels could just creep back into the Abyss the same way?
True.
I'm not going to provide any good answers to these questions.
What the fuck?
Because God forbid I answer anything in this entire video. But I do want to point out that
Oh,
no plans
what
to
do you
actually
fucking
produce
know?
the Dream No More ending are explicitly stated in-game. So we can only speculate as to whether or not the White Lady or Hornet, or maybe even the Pale King, knew that they could defeat the Radiance by creating a Lord of Shades like the Knight. Regardless, the next two endings were definitely not planned. In fact, the last two endings that were added in the Godmaster update almost feel out of place. The Godseekers basically hijack everything to the point where you don't even have to enter the Temple of the Black Egg to beat the game.
Huh?
That's like beating Mario Bros without ever seeing Bowser. But
So-
on the other hand, the
God damn it, I was gonna say that was a good comparison, then you put fucking Eggman.
Godmaster Endings basically reinforce
This
that
guy makes me
Hallownest
tweak.
does not exist in a vacuum, which can help the world of Hollow Knight feel more real. Because what else is reality but just a bunch of random chaotic stuff happening all the time? If the Knight finds the Godseeker in the Junk Pit, it will be able to enter her mind and refight all the bosses in the game. This is part of the Godseeker's ritual. They basically attune to the resonance of gods through ritual combat. This allows them to ascend their minds higher, and eventually, through the use of godly focus, achieve communication with the god sleeping in Hallownest's heart, the Radiance. Now I know what you're thinking. That's a pretty convoluted little religious practice they have going on here. What's next? Are they going to start measuring the Knight's Theon levels? It's pretty complicated, but the point is, these Godseekers have some serious capabilities to fuck things up in Hallownest, as we're about to see. As the Knight makes it further and further through the four Pantheons, the Godseekers get closer and closer to making contact with the Radiance, locked away inside the Hollow Knight. At the end of the fourth Pantheon, the Radiance makes herself aware in this strange reunion cutscene between the vessels. But she isn't the only one to make an appearance. The Void itself appears to go on the attack, rising up to meet the Radiance's call. It's at this point that the final challenge, the Pantheon of Hallownest, becomes available. The Godseeker finally acknowledges the Knight as being more than just a simple cringer, and they begin to watch the Knight more intently. After defeating like a bazillion bosses in the final Pantheon, the Knight finally comes face to face with the Absolute Radiance, a stronger, more enhanced version of the game's final boss. Finally, the stage is set. After roughly 40 minutes of intense agony and tedious boss battles, the knight has finally reached the ultimate enemy, responsible for the destruction of Hallow.
I dozed off. What happened? We're fighting God now.
Truly, this will be a battle for the ages. But first, let's check in on our old pal Enderbug. As it turns out, he's still alive when the knight arrives in Hallow, and he's still fulfilling his duty after all this time. Let's take one last look at his diary.
My lovely
Oh my
diary.
gosh,
Someone's
shut
gone
up,
broke. My
dude.
favorite sign.
Shut
right there. At the top
up!
of the crossroads. Keeps happening too. But you know, I just can't get mad about it. I should be thanking them, really. More chances to fix that beautiful, complex sign.
What pisses me off the most is that these like sections with the Menderbug unironically have most of the like fucking effort from the video because he actually draws these out. He writes like the dude.
And I've stocked up on
Stop.
spare parts, so I've no fear it'll ever stay broken for long.
Unfortunately, the only way to ever read the Menderbug's diary is to kill him in cold blood. I'm not sure why Team Cherry thought this was necessary, but the general consensus on Reddit is that they are bloodthirsty warmongers, so it checks out. But at least Menderbug's last moments will be spent fixing one of his favorite signs in the Forgotten Crossroads. It's comforting to think that his final seconds of consciousness were spent in total bliss, before we sent him hurtling into the infinite chasm that is Oblivion. Well anyways, the alternate fight between the Knight and the Radiance plays out differently than in the vanilla ending. This time around, the Knight is not accompanied by any shades. Instead, after defeating the Radiance, the Knight seems to transform into this monstrosity.
What?
Now this
This looks
creature goes by many
insane.
names.
Oh my.
The God of Gods, the Lord Shade, the Devourer, the Void Entity.
Dude
But
became
I don't
God.
really like any of those, so I will just call him Bill.
Of course
Bill
you will.
proceeds to completely annihilate the Radiance in spectacular fashion. We are then treated to the Embrace the Void ending. Bill comes back down from the sky, dropping into the rest of Godhome. The Godseeker starts to get pulled into Bill by Void tendrils. We then cut to the Godseeker in the junk pit. Void starts leaking out of her eyes, and it appears as though Bill is making an escape back into the real world, which is probably a bad thing? Finally, we see Hornet standing outside of the Black Egg as the infection begins to disappear from nearby vines. Hornet hears footsteps coming from inside the Black Egg as the Hollow Knight reveals itself to her and the two prepare for combat. So from this cutscene, we can see that the Radiance's death in Godhome actually did kill her for real, meaning that the infection over Hallow is now gone. This means the seals inside of the Black Egg probably wore off, allowing the Hollow Knight to escape its prison. In other words, the Embrace the Void ending is a goddamn cliffhanger.
That's
And
it?
we have no idea how Team Cherry plans to follow this up. The Hollow Knight is running loose in Hallow, and the Knight has transformed into a raging void
That's
monster
it?
that might try to destroy the entire kingdom, or at least what's left of it. What's even more strange about this ending is that the announced sequel, Hollow Knight Silksong, doesn't seem to be related to this ending at all. But that's a whole different shit show. Obviously, the biggest mystery surrounding this ending is the appearance of Bill. Did this creature exist in the void already? Or was it somehow willed into existence by the power of the Godseekers? Did the Knight turn into this thing, or did it just become a part of it? Examining a statue of this creature and other forms of the Knight grant the player a Hunter's Journal entry for an ancient artifact called the Void Idol, which might imply this creature might have been worshipped by the ancient civilization. But again,
Rare artifact from a time before Hallow Nest. Its spires twined in a unified form. Contains a large amount of liquid from the abyss, perfectly still. Inspired or mad, those ancient bugs. They devoted their worship to no lord or power or strength, but to the very darkness itself.
that's pure speculation. We don't know what this worship of Void exactly looked like.
Is this a bad ending? I don't know, but I don't like it.
Maybe the Void they worship took the form of something more sinister. There is one thing we know about this monster though. It's weak to flowers.
Huh?
Yes, these things. As it turns out, those delicate flowers that Zamir has stockpiled up her ass are actually useful for something. They contain a strange power that even deters the White Lady from touching one. The Godseeker, however, is dumb enough to accept a flower from the Knight. If the player does this, instead of Void being released out into the world, this flower pulls a no you, and the Godseeker and Void disappear into thin air. The flower itself is described as giving off a pale light, which appears to connect it to the pale beings. Like I said before, pale beings appear to be some form of top-tier gods. As of right now, we are only aware of two, the Pale King and the White Lady, but the fact that Zamir brought these pale flowers from a faraway land implies that there are definitely more of them out there. Another small hint of the existence of pale beings are the pale ore items that can be found all over Hallownest. Did these come from the Pale King, or possibly some other pale being? And what exactly are they? Are they poop? In general, the Godmaster Endings appear to be doing a lot of setup for future Hollow Knight content. Like I said before, Hollow Knight Silksong doesn't seem to connect to these events on the surface.
Now I want to know about
we are in a bit of
Silksong
a
lore.
bind when trying to discuss what these endings actually mean for the greater narrative Team Cherry is building. There's definitely a lot more to consider about what the Pale Beings are and what properties they possess. And we also have plenty of questions surrounding the Void and how bugs have interacted with it in the past. It almost feels like we are looking through a keyhole, trying to grasp onto the totality of Team Cherry's creation. How powerful are creatures like Bill and the Wyrms? Where did things like the Void even come from to begin with? How much bigger is the world beyond Hallownest? Is Bardoon into butt stuff? But of course, that's the appeal of a game like Hollow Knight. Having all of the answers to every question would just ruin the mystery of the world. Plus, if we didn't have questions like this to waste our time on, then what else would we be doing with our lives? Go outside?
Oh god,
Yeah.
oh god! Oh
And so
god!
this video comes to an end. Now I know the average attention span
Jeez,
of a
put a
YouTube
trigger warning
viewer
next
is
time.
9 minutes. So let me leave you with a few takeaways. 1. Hollow Knight is a game about bugs. I know this may come as a shock, but it's true. Watch the
Shut-
video again, and this time, pay
Shut
attention.
up!
You'll notice right away, I promise. 2.
Shut
Murdering
up!
your own babies might not be such a good idea after all. I mean, this is obviously just my
Shut up,
interpretation of
shut
the
up.
game's lore. Other people might have different views on the subject of murdering babies,
This
and
guy's
every opinion is
so
valid, so I don't want to step on
I-
anyone's toes or anything.
I can't.
3. Menderbug is fucking dead.
No, the fuck he's not.
4. Nothing is certain. This video probably has a few flaws in it. Trying to construct a cohesive narrative with the information found in Hollow Knight isn't exactly
This guy's so
straightforward.
funny.
I'm sure my views will change in the future, and I encourage you to explore the lore yourself. 5. And this last point is fairly obvious, but I should mention it anyway.
No, don't.
Cory in the House is the best anime.
It's a party every week, baby.
God damn it. God fucking damn it, dude. Okay. Oh my god, that was literally like a full circle moment. Okay, that was a really cool video. Alright, but I still feel like I have a bunch of questions. I'm not even content with any of these endings. I hate all of them. I need more. I need to play Hollow Knight. I need to finish Hollow Knight. And then I need to do Silksong. I want to know the lore. I want to know the lore. That felt longer than an hour. It was an hour 20. And I did pause multiple times. Hitting the books before Silksong releases. Alright, let's do this one last time. Oh my god. How everybody came and watched this right after the Silksong announcement. What the shut up. Teacher went on record to say how the elegant design, tight mechanics, and subtle world building of Cory in the House. Stop. Can the Wayward Compass bring back Dad from getting the milk or not? I can't read these fucking comments, bro. Oh my god. You know that they say like the viewers are similar to the creator? This is really truly accurate in this instance. Oh my god. Alright, that was really fun. I'm glad that I actually sat down and watched this because I feel it'll give me a better grasp of like the story while I actually play. I do feel, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't finished Hollow Knight yet, obviously, but I feel this is really one of those games where you can benefit from watching the lore beforehand so you can have like a better grasp on what's going on. I guess minus like the endings if you'd like to keep that private or secret. But I don't know, I think it works.